Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Arjun, and I'm joined by my co host, Penelope. Welcome back to our podcast, 20s Decoded, where we talk about interviewing, we talk about relationships, we talk about personal life, everything that you deal with right when you graduate college in your young adulthood life. Penelope, say hello to everybody. How are
Hey
you doing
everyone.
today?
Actually, pretty great because I'm on PTO currently. I mean, it's the weekend, but I'm on PTO for 2 weeks. So my mom is there, coming from France. We've been doing some hiking. We've been enjoying the sun. I've got a little bit of sunburn, but yeah, that's been fun. What about you? You've been racing, like doing a marathon or a semi-marathon?
No, but it was half marathon. I had a great time doing it. It was this past weekend. It was the New York City half marathon that starts in Prospect Park in Queens and goes all the way to Central Park in Manhattan. Quite an adventure, to be honest. Really enjoyed myself, but unfortunately, I did not train for it, so I didn't get the time that I wanted, and I was kind of bummed out about that. I thought I would be able to start a training regimen early on, and I kind of used the good old work excuse to delay that training, and it eventually never happened. But the good news is I did finish. I am still alive, as you can see right now. I did. I was able to run the first 12 miles without having to stop, so I was pretty impressed and happy with that, actually. This is kind of like a good way into our conversation today, actually, where like my preparation for my marathon was not that great, but we can give our audience a great podcast on a preparation for
Yeah,
interviewing.
yeah.
So I,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true. But actually, you're a good runner. But I feel that yeah, we can just give our audience a little bit of like coming from our experience with interviewing right out of college or right out of graduate school, and maybe not only interviewing but also the steps before, because I really think that interviewing is only like the tip of the iceberg. It's only like what you do once you know what you want to do for a job, once you know what you're passionate about, and so on. So there are many, many steps before that we can maybe describe a little bit so that we can have like an overview of the entire job search process, basically.
yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And I kind of wanted to start off by this first step of even before the interview process, like you said, right? I think the first step should be knowing yourself and knowing your options out there. So, kind of, I wanted to explore like your experience with this process, maybe like the discovery research, the career discovery research that you used, and the networking strategies that you use behind this. So if you can give us like a quick thing about like what you've done in the past that helped you become successful in knowing yourself and knowing the options out there, that
Yes.
would be great.
Um, I would say that maybe the first point is that whether you're in college or graduate school or you want to switch jobs and so on, my experience is that when I was in this position, I was really convinced that everybody knew what the fuck they were doing. But in fact, it's really not true. And it's really all about discovery. um, and discovery means being curious, and curious, it's just like reaching out to people, it's reading books, listening to podcasts and so on, so that then you can just like narrow down the topics that you really want to dive more into, the topics that you're like more interested about. So especially if you're in like at college or in graduate school, I feel that there are a lot of great resources that you can use. You have like college counselor. You have also maybe if you have like older siblings, um, your siblings and maybe your siblings' friends and so on. Really, the key for me was to talk with people who are maybe like one step ahead of me, not necessarily talking to people who have been like 20, 30, 40 years in the industry. For for me, it's really just where do I want to go and who did that maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. they are more, it's more easy for them to help you if they've been there like kind of soonish. What about you?
Yeah, so like for me specifically, I kind of follow this track throughout undergrad. Like you said, right? Like looking at people all around us, I feel like they all knew what they had to do or what they wanted to do, and me, I truly didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of took a step back. Especially when I was an undergrad, I was looking at all my options, and I was like, okay, I found a really interesting program that I wanted to do in Boston, and I kind of went with the flow from there. From grad school, I had an internship, which led to a full time job, which led me to like not knowing what I wanted to do with my career actually after my first job. So I actually reached out to the career services when I at the end of my first job, and I did a couple of online assessments where like the Myers-Briggs test. I spoke to them about like things that I'm passionate about, and I kind of figured out what I wanted to do with my own life, and I was quite happy with the results of it, like where I am at right now. So doing these online assessments, career counselings, and like speaking to other people is like very key to the process. In terms of like networking, right? Like even like talking to friends and talking to people that you've met along the journey is a very big part of knowing like what industries that you want to go towards or the roles that you want to pursue. And you can listen to more about this in our earlier podcast, actually in our networking podcast. But networking is a very great way of figuring out what you want to do and knowing what your options are out there. So like after these after knowing what you wanted to do or knowing yourself, figuring out what you want to do, the next step is kind of the research step, Penelope. So I would love to hear from you, right? When you came down to doing the research, say like you figured out the company, you figured out the role that you wanted to do, what did you do next in this
Yes,
process?
so there are actually two answers to this question. There is the way I did it and the way I would do it if I were to do it again. So maybe let's dive into the first one. It was just all over the place. I was talking to a lot of people, listening to a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of books, and so on. So I had this information overflow. And it was super hard to actually know what I really wanted to do because I had like so many great pieces of advice, but just it was too much. So that's the way I did it, and I was a bit lost, if I have to be honest. That's why I went first into finance, and then 2 months in, I was just like, oh, sorry, I think that I'm really passionate about life science. So the way I did it was not necessarily the right way, but I'm aware that for a lot of people, it's actually maybe the only way they know how to do it because we've never been trained. When you're like in high school, college, graduate school, you're not really trained to know how to look for a job. So the way I would do it right now is kind of two phases. The first one is doing the research, but the research is not really useful, for me at least, if I do not spend some time not doing research. And this time that is spent not doing research, I actually spend it just kind of summarizing what I've learned, looking at the common points in what people told me or the podcasts and books I listened to or read and so on. And I think that this phase is maybe the most important one, like summarizing the learnings about the topics that you're interested in, about the different jobs that you can be interested in, so that then my brain can be a little bit more clear, let's say, about what exactly it is that I want to do. And so that then, like the next person that I'm gonna talk talk to about a specific job, I know exactly which questions I want to ask. I know exactly what what are maybe like the pain points that I want to maybe clarify a little bit. So I would say that yes, it's important to reach out to a lot of people, to have a lot of great resources, but maybe doing a bit less of that so that it's not 100% research. It's like 60% research and 40% summarizing and really seeing what matters to you inside this research. What about you?
I I like that actually. Instead of like coming oversaturated with so much advice from everybody in the field, you kind of can stop the research source, condense it down, summarize it for yourself, and make it easily digestible for yourself. I really like that, and I think that's like a very big thing actually to do when you're in that research phase and you're looking seeking out advice. Right? There's so many people out there. Like us, like also like us, that are trying to give out advice, trying to show you the right way, and truly, it becomes overwhelming to be honest, right? Like right out of college, I reached out to multiple people, and it was just like chaotic to be honest, right? Like do this, you got to do that, you got to do this way, you got to do this way, and everybody's like trying to get you to go towards your first job, but you're like trying to figure out what do I really want to do in my first job right now. So I think that's a great way of actually making it digestible for yourself and understanding what is in front of you. In terms of research, I did this kind of in the career counseling phase, like in the research of knowing yourself, kind of figuring out, okay, where do my interests align most in the industry? Where do I like to spend most of my time? What am I interested in? What am I passionate about? And see where that is, right? And for our current position, I love to help out people. I love the tech industry. I love interacting with people, with different stakeholders, and I think I'm a great person for conveying information and having also a little bit more of a technical background. So this role that I'm currently in is feels like a great fit for me, and I was able to. That's how I was able to do a lot of my research. Actually, I think and I kind of didn't speak about this in an earlier point, but I think that I really appreciated the career counseling that I actually got. And I think I have to thank my grad school for doing that with me. The Myers Briggs test truly gave me an insight into what type of person that I am, and I truly didn't know what type of person I was, and didn't realize like that what I really like to do, I didn't even know I really like to do before this. So that research phase, I think it's like a two-part thing. It's kind of tied in with the first part of researching of like what who you are as a person, and also like you said, right, making the research digestible for you and using that research. Some after summarizing that research, take advantage of that, and that's how you conduct your search. So that kind of leads me into my next point, right? Like I do want to ask you, like after doing the research, figuring out what type of field that you want in, you kind of want to start crafting your story, right? You want to create this resume that is kind of, do you create like a resume that is kind of targeted towards the company that you're doing, and do you create a more general resume, like kind of listening to the art of creating a resume in general? And I would love to hear your stance behind that and the power of like a cover letter as well. A lot of companies have just resume submitters, and you're allowed to submit additional documents, right? And do you usually submit a cover letter? Do you only submit it when they require it? What is your
Yes.
experience
So
behind
when I was
this?
trying to transition from finance to the life science industry, my point was really to showcase that I was passionate about life science. Because the thing is that I had absolutely no work experience in life science. So that's when the power of just like showcasing my story and showcasing my passion about it was actually no, it was maybe the most important point, because it was the only way I was going to convince people that I was good at what they were trying to interview me about. So this thing about like what's my story was the most important point in my resume. So I would say that in my resume, I tried to showcase not only my technical side, by mentioning projects that I had worked on either in undergrad or graduate school, even during my internships or my work when I was in finance. So that was the first point. But once you have those technical points, it's super important to showcase why do you want to apply those technical skills to the job that you're currently interviewing to. And we are talking about technical skills, but it can be like non-technical skills for people who are just not in tech. um,
Do you have any examples, Penelope? I would love
yes.
to hear. Yeah, like
So I had done a project about kind of predicting wildfires in California. So it was deep into machine learning, time series, and so on. And so it was the perfect project to put on my resume, because it showcased not only my technical side but also everything that relates to project management, because I was kind of like the project manager for this project. So showcasing my hard skills as well as showcasing my soft skills, because I think that this is maybe one very important point, is that even if you're super good technically, you have a lot of people who are super good technically. And so I really wanted to showcase that I was good as a person as well. That I was a nice person to work with, because I'm not only behind my computer just like coding and so on. You have meetings. It's nice within your teams to just be surrounded by nice people. It's kind of obvious, but sometimes when we're in the interview process, we forget that a little bit. Just wanting to showcase the technical side of things, when in fact you're a person. You have passions, you have hobbies outside of work. So, showcasing who you are and why you're passionate about what you're doing is paramount to just being a nice person and showcasing yourself.
it's those interpersonal skills that you want to show, right? Like what truly sets you apart, right? Like you can be the best coder in the entire in the world, right? But if you don't have those soft skills of speaking to a team, like, and a lot of companies look for like teamwork, being able to work with other people, right? If you don't have those soft skills, then you would not obviously you wouldn't get to the next round, right? Or like you wouldn't get to the next round for like a lot of companies. So having showing that side of yourself is like a really good thing to really good to take advantage of. Which you are. You have great interpersonal skills, and I believe that was like it's a very good thing on your part. So like I really love the fact that you brought that up, like kind of differentiating yourself from the competition out there as well. Like nowadays we see everybody becoming like the next software engineer. You know, the salary looks really nice, the job lifestyle looks really nice as well. But everybody's becoming a software engineer, and kind of like how do you like differentiating yourself from the competition, right? Whether it be the different projects that you do or the different skills that you show as a person, right? Or showing that you're just like a regular person, right? Like you have a life outside of work, right? Like you and your hiking and like the different activities you do, you show. I genuinely think like putting like I thought it was weird at first, but like my career counselor actually told me to put your hobbies into your resume, and I was like, why? You're wasting space, right? You're adding like a couple of extra lines, but I think it was like the smartest thing to actually include into your resume because you're able to build conversation out of it, right? Like it's an extra 3 lines. You can definitely sacrifice an extra 3 lines just to put like a hobby in there, but it shows that you have a life outside of work. You're able to build a conversation with somebody in the interview process, and I think it just shows that you're like an actual human, right? So like having those hobbies, I think, is a very big thing in a resume. I personally think, and I think it's helped me get to the position that I'm actually at today. In terms of like crafting the resume itself, right? Like the specific resume, Penelope, and I would love to hear your input after but like for me personally, like I had a lot. I had done a lot of projects undergrad, and I went to grad school, and I did a bunch of projects, and they're kind of like led me to 2 pages. And a lot of people say that like 1 page is like all you need in a resume, but I don't necessarily think that's true. Like, how do you encapsulate all these wonderful activities that you've been doing, activities, projects, etc., like past experiences? Because truly you don't like I honestly think I thought like when I was crafting my own resume was I was like I felt like I did nothing whatsoever in like my 4 years of undergrad, my 1 year grad school, and I was like, what do I even possibly put? And as I started typing more and more, and I just kept thinking, oh my god, there's so many things that I've actually done. My senior design project, the different projects I did throughout undergrad, I was like, wow, I did like a tremendous amount of work. And I would, and I do have to say, like those really helped a lot. But the initial, like when you're sending your resume to, like submitting your resume to an online portal, right? You don't the online portal. It's not read by like a human. Your resume initially your resume is not read by a human, so it's read by like a bot, and they scan for keywords in your resume. I would love to hear from you, right? Is it like better to put, like, in your personal opinion, like when you're applying to jobs, do you put like the keywords that for each position that is there that they're looking for? Like say you're looking for interpersonal skills, or you're looking for, like, say Python skills or whatever, right? Do you personally craft it to each position, or do you have a general resume, and then do you send a specific resume to different positions that you feel that you would be a better fit
Yes.
for?
So when I was applying, ChatGPT did not exist. So what I did is that I had this one resume, and then I was kind of tweaking a little bit for each job that I was applying to. Even if all of them were in the life science space, I still wanted to showcase like why, for instance, if one is more like one job was more about like using time series, so then I put more keywords about how I handled like longitudinal data, time series, and so on. So having this general resume, then you can tweak a little bit in order to apply for the job, was for me the way to go. The good part is that right now with ChatGPT you can do it very easily. I know that there are a bunch of GPTs actually that have been made in order to just craft good resume. That being said, I would say that maybe the most important point to remember is that you want to avoid at all costs the fact that you're just going to apply to job and pray that the bot is going to say, oh yes, move this person to the next round. What you want to do is reach out to people who can then you can then give your resume to those people, and then maybe they can move you to the interview process, because you have so many people applying to jobs that it's super hard to actually make a difference when you're screened by a bot. For me, the way I did it is just I wanted to be screened by a human, and so just reaching out to people, which you are doing, and which I was doing during the knowing myself phase, and then during the research phase. So that's for me, that's the way to go.
ChatGPT is truly your best friend in this regards. But like I feel like as now it's like becoming more and more popular, right? Like everybody's going to be doing it. Everybody's going to be creating these insanely good resumes, and I'm just quite like, as ChatGPT is like your best friend, but I can also think it's like your biggest enemy at the same time, because everybody's using this exact tool to create this perfect resume, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the process is refined going forward. I feel like, especially when ChatGPT creates a resume for you, you should try to proofread it, make sure it doesn't sound like a bot that's writing it, but like make it act like an and make it sound like an actual human is writing
Yes.
it as well. So I think that's like a very big thing. ChatGPT can write your resume, but make sure you proofread it as before you submit it into a specific position, or have a general
Ye-
resume, or have it as a general resume. I kind of wanted to move on to our penultimate topic, which is kind of the interview round, right? I would love to hear about from you, like the key things that do matter when it comes to interviews, and like maybe some like common interview questions that you've experienced, and like especially like at the end of these interviews, right? Like they ask for you to say like, do you have any questions about it, and are there like any smart questions that come to the top of your head when you're talking to an interviewer or a
yes.
recruiter?
So maybe starting with the interview process, I found that most of the companies I've applied to, they have a first round with, which is more about just fit, who you are as a person, why you want to apply to the position at this specific company, why this company, why this position. Maybe I had like one technical question, but the goal was not to assess my technical abilities, because before that there was maybe like online, just like a little coding challenge of also where they just screened people on their like hard technical abilities. So when you move to the first round, it's more about soft skills and seeing if you're a good fit. Then the other round, maybe like second and third one, if there are 3 rounds, it's a little bit more geared towards um, the hard skills, when you have questions that are a little bit more in depth in terms of the project that you've worked on, your technical abilities. Still 1 or 2 questions about soft skills, who you are, and so on, because we are human. but um, but we need I found that the best way to prepare for those interviews for me was to have maybe 2 or 3 projects that were related to the job that I was applying to, and that I knew that people were going to ask questions that I was comfortable answering. I can take an example. So the wildfire project that I mentioned with predicting wildfires, when I was explaining this project during my interviews, I was on purpose putting some keywords and not explaining like everything like super in depth, so that I knew that I was going to get a question on at least one of the things about which I had put some keywords. For instance, I saying, "Oh yeah, I pre-processed the time series in order to do this and that." Of course, if I do not say how I did it, the next interview question is going to be, "Oh, so then how did you process this specific time series," and so on. And I was comfortable answering this question because first, I had actually done the project, and second, I had prepared for it because I knew the keyword that I wanted to put when I was mentioning this project, and I knew that for maybe at least 1, 2, or 3 of them, I was going to have questions about it. So really, the art of it for me was to try to lead the interviewer to ask me questions that I was comfortable answering. And it's really all about training, honestly. What about you? What did you do for just like preparing for those either fit interviews or more technical interviews?
Yeah, so for me, like with my first job, I kind of it was an internship that led to a full time job. But for the internship, it was like we had a program that had been set up with our grad school, so it was very fortunate that like the person that was interviewing us knows exactly what we had learned in grad school. So the technical part wasn't too hard because everybody knew what they were talking about, and that was kind of simple. I kind of focused more on the soft skills side of trying to, you know, I think there's like a couple of steps that go into these first round of interviews, and like not the HR calls, but the first round of interviews where it's like your interview attire, your body language, maintaining positive eye contact. I think that's like all a very big thing. And I personally, me, like especially when I talk to someone like say you or my boss or even my VP, I try to maintain positive eye contact with them at all times because it shows that you're being attentive to them, and I think that's truly what matters, right? You may not know all the answers to their questions, and I think that's perfectly appropriate. But the fact that you're showing that you're being attentive and you're asking questions and you're listening to them is a very big skill that not a lot of people have. Uh, I think people are very rushed and they want to ask questions and they want to show that they know everything, but at the same time, truly nobody knows everything. And it's better to actually ask questions instead of BSing one on the spot or BSing answers on the spot. And I think that's truly what has fed into my success in the interview rounds. I think that's like a very big thing. your body language, make sure you're speaking to the actual person, show that you're not like lying down in bed going to an interview, but you actually are sitting up or standing during your interview, and making sure that you're standing tall and confident, I think is a very big thing. And when you stand tall and confident, it's not even your posture, it's your mentality also. You're exuding confidence, you're talking proudly, you're talking about your own resume in these interviews, and you should be proud of the work that you do, and you know your resume better than anybody else. So I think that's like a very big thing to know, especially when you're going through an interview, because a lot of interviewees ask questions about your own resume. So, like, I think that's like a very big thing when it comes to that. When it comes to the technical round, like, I think, like you said before, knowing the keywords to each of the projects that you have done is a very big thing and very important thing as well, right? You're being, like you said, right? You have to be very proactive with this approach, right? Instead of saying explaining detail by detail, figure out the keywords in each of the projects and make sure you mention them, right? It shows that you know what you're talking about, and it saves a lot of time, because then interviewees can ask you other questions, right? Because in a lot of these people are taking time out of their very busy days to actually give you this interview. So saving time, I think, is personally better in that regard. And then, like, at the end of the interviews, I think like asking questions about the company and the research about the company itself is a very important I think to do, right? It shows that it demonstrates actually your research and your genuine interest in the role in the company itself. And I think this is kind of ties back into the first three steps, right? Where you've done a bunch of research on the company, show that you've done the research, right? And it's okay to ask stupid questions, because you know what you're asking questions based on your research as well. Even if it's like the dumbest question out there, there's no such thing as a dumb question. So feel free to ask it, right? Don't be tensed up. Be confident in the way you go about this. I know we're running a little bit out of time, and I know we had one more thing to discuss. So, like, we could take a couple quick 2 minutes to discuss this. But, like, your post interview follow up, right? What do you do in this regard? I would love to hear your feedback from this, Penelope. Like, when you finish an interview, what is your common
Yeah,
thing to
so
do?
let me just go back to the last question. Like usually interviewer ask me a last question. The way I love to do it is asking a question not only about the company, but also about what this specific person likes at the company. Asking about a project that this specific person is asking, so that the interviewer feels a little bit more special and not just like one roadblock along the way in the interview process. So that's the way I love to do it, which leads to the post interview follow up, where what I used to do was just reaching out to the person on LinkedIn, or if I had this person's email, via email, just saying, hey, thank you for this great interview. I really enjoyed talking about this and that. And also asking for a quick follow up, saying, if you're allowed to do to do so, can you just like give me one piece of advice of something that I could have done a bit better, so that there is actually a follow up. And I really want to emphasize, if you are allowed to do so, because sometimes the person is not actually allowed to do so, or does not want to, but he's not going to say I don't want to. So the fact that you're saying if you're allowed to do so kind of can give this person a way out by saying, oh, I'm not allowed to do so, even if sometimes true. So just, yes, saying thank you, because as you said, it was just 30 minutes, 1 hour of this person's time, and just asking for advice for the next step.
I completely agree with you, Penelope. All these interviewers are like us. We're humans. We love appreciation. We love to engage in regular conversation, and I think that's a great point that you brought up. Right, writing a personalized note, thank you note at the end at the after your interview is a very big and key step at the end of it. If I was an interviewer and I got a thank you message from you, I would feel appreciated. And if you try to engage in like a conversation or have it even like ask for advice, I would respond back to it as well. It shows that you have keen interest, and you're still, even if it doesn't work out at the end, this is another person that you can add to your network as well. So I think that is like a that leaves a great impression for them about yourself. So I definitely do highly recommend like all of our audience to actually write a thank you message at the end of each interview that you do. Adds another person to your network, and you can reach out to them. And who knows, maybe another position opens up later in the timeline of the company, and they reach out to you to like interview for it and actually to apply to that job. So that could work out in your benefit. So yeah, like so can I would love for us to like go. We know we discussed a bunch of topics today, so I kind of wanted to go back and like would love to hear like the two main points to each like big conversation from you. I guess I can start off with that, right? And I kind of goes back to like the first step of right knowing yourself and knowing your options. Explore the discovery resources and networking strategies. I think these are two big things that work in your favor and into figuring out yourself and figuring out what are your options in front of you. Penelope, I'd love to hear about like the research side. What are two big points from your
Yes,
end?
so there are really two parts that I love to do in the on the research side. The first one is the actual research, reaching out to people, listening to podcasts, reading books, and so on, and then summarizing, so that then you can ask more relevant question to the next person that you're gonna talk with, and it's more efficient. Maybe spending a little bit less time trying to acquire some new knowledge and a little bit more time trying to actually use the knowledge that you have.
Love that. And then it kind of leads us into like all these first two or three big steps are like done simultaneously. The resume step, right? The art of crafting your resume, your cover letter, and other documents, right? Putting these keywords down is a very big step in the process of getting past the bot. I think that's a very big process. And putting down, don't be afraid of putting down extracurricular activities, hobbies, etc. Right? Don't be afraid to use a little bit more space or leave a little bit of space for those things because it helps a lot in terms of the first interview, and it kind of relaxes you as well, especially if the interviewer brings it up, right? The next step is the interviewing step, right? Love to hear from you. Like, what do you think are like the two big points that we've discussed today?
Yes, so there is usually this soft skills side and those hard skills that you're going to be evaluated against. Um, my main point when I was interviewing was really to just showcase my personal story. So, really try to put an emphasis on my soft skills because at some point when you're in the interview process, when when you're past the screening for just like coding skills or like hard skills, everybody that is interviewing has good technical skills. Maybe a bit, some a little bit more than others, but at some point you're just nearly at equal level. So, what is going to make the difference is who you are as a person, what you're passionate about, why is the activity of the company linked to what you're passionate about, and what you can add to the company's currency in order to create value with the skills that you have.
I love that, Penelope. And to finally sum it up, right, the post interview follow up, right? Writing a simple thank you note can go a very long way. It shows an appreciation for the interview and taking the interviewer's time and having an engaging conversation with them. It's a great way to show empathy and show that like you are interested in having future conversations if they ever arise as well. So I think this is a very big thing that should be done at the end of each interview. Like I personally think that this interview, I really enjoyed this interview podcast, doing this with you, Penelope, and like hearing from your own experiences is like really truly enlightened me as well. To be like, if there are ever any future interviews that I conduct, I would follow those steps that you had mentioned, and I would think you would do the same as for me, right? A bunch of things that like we could have like that we didn't mention, but you can definitely do with other people is definitely like mock interviews or listener questions, where like you could practice with friends on these interviews and having them ask you questions along the process. This is a great podcast for anybody that's looking to make to even like start their career, not only start their career but also to transition into a new career as well. Like you have transferred your skills from finance to the life sciences industry. I think it's a great show. It showcases that like the power of interviewing, the power of networking, and the power of researching as well. So I do want to thank you for giving us like all your experience, Penelope. Like I think truly like you've given like you like your experiences have helped me learn about like not only helped me but like helping our people our audience as well.
Yeah,
So
I
thank you for
completely
that.
agree. And I'm also learning a lot talking with you. And actually, that's the reason why we started this podcast, which is that we are learning a lot from one another. So just maybe recording it so that people can also benefit from it. It does not go, it's not very hard for us, and it goes a long way, we think, for maybe even one person listening to it. So that's great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Penelope. Thank you everybody for listening to us. Great. Hope to see you next
Yeah.
week. Bye.